네 번째 강연인 PNG 및 PNG 어업 개요 및 진출 가이드를 시작하겠습니다. 발표자인 웨인 오스터버그는 글로벌 회계법인 KPMG의 파푸아뉴기니 법인 디렉터이며 금융 분야에서 오랜 경력을 가지고 계십니다. 지금부터 웨인 오스터버그님의 발표 시작하겠습니다.
So, good day. My name is Wayne Osterberg. I'm from KPMG in Papua New Guinea, and I'll be giving you an overview of the Papua New Guinea fisheries sector and doing business in Papua New Guinea. First, I will give you a country overview. Then I will give you a fisheries industry overview. Then I will give you an overview of the fisheries sector. Then I will talk to you about doing business in PNG, Papua New Guinea, and I will talk about KPMG in Papua New Guinea. And then there will be time for some questions and answers afterwards. So, first up, country overview. In overall terms, an economic overview is that there's real GDP growth of 3.5% projected for the coming financial year or the current year. GDP growth dropped 3.8% in 2020 as the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic affected Papua New Guinea and the rest of the world. This is expected to improve in 2021. There is an interest rate spread of around 6.9%. With loan averages at 7.8% and deposit rates at 0.9%. Consumer price index inflation is expected to be around 5% in 2021. Foreign currency is relatively short in Papua New Guinea, and this is due to deteriorating terms of trade, and there is a foreign exchange shortage for foreign exchange being remitted out of Papua New Guinea. The real exchange rate was around is around 0.3 kina to a US dollar, and it's projected to fall in 2021. Papua New Guinea's largest exports are mineral exports, but non-mineral exports fell in 2020. And imports from China increased, and imports from Australia decreased in 2020. In 2020, also balance of payments was estimated at around 366 million US dollars, and this is projected to fall to 264 million US dollars in 2021. The country overview, there's a map there of Papua New Guinea with the main urban areas across Papua New Guinea. The land mass is 462,000 square kilometers, and the EEZ is around 2.4 million square kilometers. Rainforest covers 80% of the land area in Papua New Guinea. The total population is estimated to be 9.1 million in 2021, and 80% of the population are in rural areas, with 20% in urban areas. The literacy rate is relatively low. 15 to 24 years of age, there's a 68% literacy rate, and 65 and above is around 61%. Telecommunications, the main telecommunications are Digicel, B-Mobile, and Telecom, and there are many local internet service providers. Electricity covers almost all the city and town areas and extends to rural areas close to towns. Roads, bridges, wharfs, ports, and airstrips link up towns and into villages only where feasible. The terrain in Papua New Guinea is very difficult and challenging, and this has an impact on infrastructure expansion. The capital of Port Moresby is the capital of Papua New Guinea is Port Moresby, and that is the main commercial area. Up further north is Lae, which is the gateway into the highlands of Mount Hagen, Goroka, etc., hella, where many of the natural resources and mines are based. The major commodity export items are cocoa, coffee, palm oil, gold, copper, and liquid natural gas, LNG. So if we move on to the fisheries industry more specifically, the PNG government realizes the importance of the fisheries industry in Papua New Guinea and its economic contribution to the country to provide local employment and spin-off benefits in terms of increased foreign exchange earnings and other benefits. There are around 7,000 people employed locally and around 2,000 people indirectly employed in the fishing sector. The tuna catch is around 84 to 96 million US dollars earnings on average. 190,000 metric tons of tuna products were exported in 2019, earning a total of $398 million. Sorry, 398 million US dollars in 2019. The annual government revenue from the fishing industry from license and access fees is around 550 million US dollars. A total of $359 million were earned in 2020 from marine exports. So the main imports of PNG tuna is tuna caught by the fisheries industry and landed and processed in Lae, Madang, Wewak, Rabaul, and in the Philippines. The tuna is exported as loins and in cans to Europe, Australian, and US markets. The volume of tuna, billfish, and shark catch from 2015 to 2019. Tuna catch volume was 1,252 metric tons in 2015. It fell by 356 metric tons in 2016 due to the impact of the El Nino Southern Oscillation effect. And between 2015 and 2019, the highest catch was 2,355 metric tons. Striped marlin and swordfish catch ranged between 2 million tons to 21 million tons between 2015 and 2019. And the shark catch for blue shark, mackerel, and oceanic white-tip catch remains the lowest catch from 0 to 1 million ton. The highest shark catch is the blue shark catch at 22 million tons in 2018. There are two main fishing methods applied in PNG, the purse seine and the long land methods. From the purse seine fishing method, foreign vessels fishing in PNG waters require license and operate under the conditions of that license. The specific condition under the license terms includes the number of fishing days allowable, and the table below illustrates the volume of catch in metric tons by the fishing days and tuna type for foreign purse seine vessels operating in PNG between 2015 and 2019. The average total catch from 2015 to 2019 is 98.148 metric tons for the foreign purse seine vessels, as you can see from the chart there. The light blue chart is skipjack. The blue-green quadrants are yellowfin. The small orange sections are big eye, and the straight line there are the number of fishing days, which is on the right-hand side. So if we look at the fisheries industry overall, by the year 2027, the global tuna fish market is forecasted to be at a value of 31.7 billion US dollars, up from 26.1 billion in 2020. And this is skipjack, yellowfin, big eye, and bluefin are the most sought after. The major global importers include Japan, China, European countries, and North America. And you can see those countries in the left-hand table there, with 17% going to China, 47% to the EU, 5% to South Korea, and 18% to the US. China imported $20.2 billion of fish and fisheries product in 2019. The United States imported 22 billion. South Korea imported 5.7 billion, and the European Union imported around 20 billion of fish and fisheries products. Currently, there are three main fisheries agreements in Papua New Guinea, and they are the European Union Economic Partnership Agreement, the parties to the Nauru Agreement, and the Torres Strait Treaty. The EU Economic Partnership Agreements allows for duty-free and quota-free exports to the US with a large emphasis on sustainability. And this is between the EU and Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Samoa, and the Solomon Islands. The Pacific Nauru Agreement introduces the Vessel Day Scheme, and that includes Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Nauru, the Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. And then between Australia and Papua New Guinea, there's the Torres Straits Treaty, which deals with sovereignty, maritime borders, marine environmental protection, and optimum utilization of commercial resources in the region. The Marine Stewardship Council certification. This is a non-government organization that works to ensure that fishing is carried out in a sustainable manner. In 2020, the Papua New Guinea Fishing Industry Association achieved MSC certification for sustainable fishing after finding that the fishery met 28 performance indicators required for such certification. These include measures of sustainable fish stocks, sustainable fish stocks, by catch, habitat impacts, and effective management. The MSC certification covers 64 vessels targeting skipjack and yellowfin in PNG's exclusive economic zone and archipelagic waters. Of the 64 MSC certified vessels, 32 vessels are PNG flagged and 32 vessels are Philippine flagged vessels, licensed locally as foreign-based vessels. PNG Fisheries Industry Regulation. The fisheries industry in Papua New Guinea is regulated and managed by the Papua New Guinea National Fisheries Authority, who also provide support and coordinate fishery development in the country. The NFA body facilitates export certification, regulation issues, licenses, and manages fisheries resources for sustainable growth. The NFA carries out its mandated functions as stated in the Fisheries Act 1998. The key challenges that the NSA faces is the excess in the number of purse seine tuna vessels, because the number of vessels exceeds the sustainable catch under the existing management arrangement, and that's resulted in limited licenses being available to PNG under that arrangement. Access to key markets. PNG's growth in onshore processing facilities is reliant on the access to markets such as the US and the EU. There are tuna resource concerns where yellowfin and big eye fish stocks are considered to have reached full exploitation levels. And the onshore support facilities, onshore support infrastructure is required to support the development of coastal fisheries. The final challenge is the lack of trained staff and crew, which puts a strain on the availability of trained local personnel, particularly seagoing personnel and offshore staff. Compliance to strict licensing conditions are required before a license can be issued, and these include determination of the area where fishing is allowed and how many days. Only domestic tuna purse seine vessels are licensed to fish in the archipelagic water, while all other fishing vessels conduct fish activities in the exclusive economic zone. The NFA uses monitoring and tracking devices and an NFA officer boards the fishing vessel to monitor and report all activities of the fishing vessel. NFA carry investigations where there are issues or concerns are reported. The table below provides a summary of the various types of fishing license and the activity is allowed for each fishing license. So, fishing vessel license, it allows any vessel used in the fisheries water for commercial fishing other than trial fishing, commercial buying, storage, or fish processing, mothership operating as part of a group purse seine operation, foreign registered vessels, e.g. fuel tankers supplying fuel to fishing vessels, reefer carriers receiving fish at the point of transshipment, and any Papua New Guinean vessel used for fishing in the high seas or in the fisheries water of another state or in accordance with a fisheries management agreement or other arrangement to which PNG is a party. There's a fish buyer's license required for any person or company buying fish on a commercial basis. Fish storage facility license is required for operating premises being used for exclusively or predominantly for the commercial storage of fish. There's a fish factory license for any premises being used for exclusively or predominantly for the commercial processing or packaging of fish. A fish export facility license is required to operate premises or a vessel or other place where fish are processed or held for export. An aquaculture license is required for any aquaculture facility in fisheries waters or on land. And a trial fishing license is required for any vessel used for trial fishing or other trial fishing activities. That essentially sums up the fisheries industry in Papua New Guinea and gives you a bit of a global context. I'll now turn to doing business in Papua New Guinea. So a foreign entity needs to be, operating in Papua New Guinea needs to be registered with the Investment Promotion Authority or IPA. And it's required for any foreign entity, either a company or a branch that is wholly owned or 50% or more owned or controlled by a Papua New Guinea non-citizen. And then a local business registration is required for where a company is wholly owned or 50% or more owned or controlled by a Papua New Guinea citizen. The process for setting up an overseas branch or a locally incorporated subsidiary are very similar. Foreign entities are required to register with the Registrar of Companies, the Internal Revenue Commission, and the IPA. And additional information can be requested or obtained from the IPA website. So the table there gives you some more detail on that, where there's a foreign entity registration, where there's more than 50% foreign ownership, it is deemed by the IPA to be foreign controlled. And the registration takes on average around 4 to 8 weeks. It requires a lodgement of biannual report on the branch activities in Papua New Guinea. The IPA needs to be notified within 1 month of changes to the branch, additional operating locations, changes in directors, and the like. There's a holding balance of a minimum of $24,000 or evidence of initial capital outlay by the first biannual report, which is 6 months from the certification date. There's a copy of the latest certified audited financial statements, details of the resident director, a local address, bank statement confirming the balance of $24,000. For registration of an overseas branch, the requirements are essentially the same. Immigration compliance. If you want to employ overseas staff to work in Papua New Guinea, all expatriates require an employment visa to work in Papua New Guinea, and they do it after obtaining a work permit. Expatriates employees of a PNG resident company or branch of a foreign company require valid work permits. Work permits are valid for periods of between 1 and 5 years. Employment visa conditions for certain occupation require registration with local professional bodies. For example, medical professionals, accountants, engineers required to be certified with their local professional body. Consultants or specialists may enter PNG on a business visa for activities other than employment, and the applicant may stay in PNG for 30 days for a single visit only. Multiple entry business visas are currently not available. All dependents of expatriate employees required to reside in PNG require a dependent visa. And the fees and charges and permits and visas vary depending on the duration of the work permit. Generally, with all relevant documentation provided, it takes 1 to 2 months to obtain a work permit and associated visa. Expatriate employment requires training and localization program submission to the National Training Council, which uses this to ensure that training programs for citizens are in place. And there are places to get more information on the slide. Employer obligations for non-expatriates, employers are governed by the Employment Act. For expatriates, they're governed by both the Employment Act and the Employment of Non-Citizens Act. And the common law rule takes precedent over the Employment Acts and is applicable in Port Moresby, Lae, Rabaul, and Mount Hagen. And these may differ from city to city. In terms of superannuation or pension contribution, employers with 15 or more employees are required to contribute an amount equal to 8.4% of the gross wages of their citizen employees to an authorized superannuation or pension fund in PNG. In addition, those citizen employees are required to contribute 6% of their after-tax income to the fund. Currently, employers are not required to make mandatory superannuation contributions in respect of expatriate employees, though these can be made voluntarily. And the PNG system also provides for concessional taxation of payments made to employees as a result of their retirement or resignation. Where certain conditions are met, the concessional rates may be 2%, 8%, or 15%, depending on the circumstances. In terms of taxation, there are a variety of different tax rates across entities of varying kinds. Set out below are some of the high-level tax summaries. So, for example, a resident company will pay income tax at 30%. There is a dividend withholding tax of 15% to resident individuals, resident trust estates, and all non-residents. This applies to post-tax profits. Some entities have a double tax arrangement, which brings this dividend withholding tax down to 10%. There is the income tax on branches of overseas corporations is 48%. Goods and services tax are between 0 and 10% and applied to all resident and foreign entities. Certain suppliers may be zero rated or GST free. Most services and products on the fisheries sector are subject to GST. Personal income tax and salaries and wages tax is between 0 and 42%. There is a progression or progressive income tax calculated from income tax brackets. There's a royalty withholding tax of 10 or 30%. All entities are subject to a royalty withholding tax. If it's paid to a non-associate, it's 10%. It's 30% if paid to associates. There is a foreign contractors withholding tax of 15% for where there's a contract for work done in PNG by foreign contractors. There's an interest withholding tax of 15%. There's a management fee withholding tax of 17%, which is applicable to the payment to foreign consulting firms, excluding countries with double tax treaties. Those are Canada, Australia, Singapore, New Zealand, China, South Korea, Germany, once a treaty has been ratified. Those are at 0%. A management fee withholding tax is applied to UK, Malaysia, and Indonesia at 10% and Fiji at 15%. Currently, there's no capital gains tax applicable in PNG. Following on from the previous slide, the taxable income rate, for example, we've given you the amounts in Kina and approximate US dollar amounts. So anyone who earns under around 3,000 US dollars pays 0%. That goes up to 22% if you earn between, say, $3,000 and $4,800. And it rises quite quickly. And the top tax band, if you exceed 250,000 Kina in a year, which is around 60,000 US dollars, you'll pay 42%. And a PNG resident individual is subject to tax on his or her worldwide income. And a non-resident of PNG will only be subject to PNG income tax on that income that is considered to have a PNG source. Note, non-PNG tax resident individuals do not receive the tax-free threshold. They get taxed at the maximum rate. There are double taxation agreements with the following countries, and I talked a little bit about them earlier: Australia, Canada, UK, Singapore, New Zealand, Indonesia, Korea, and the China and the Korean Republic. That's 15% on dividends, 10% of interest, and 10% of royalties. Malaysia is 15, 15, and 10, and Fiji is 15, 10, and 15. So banking, there are 4 major commercial banks in Papua New Guinea: the Bank of South Pacific, Westpac Bank PNG Limited, Kina Bank Limited, and ANZ Banking Corporation. The requirements to set up a bank account include a registered certificate and company extract, IRC, a tax identification number and tax identification number certificate, and identification documents. Finance, there are a total of 14 licensed financial institutions who can take deposits and make loans. In terms of properties and rental, there are very many rental properties available in Port Moresby. Rental prices are high relative to other jurisdictions. For example, residential apartment can cost a minimum of 260 US dollars per week to around 3,600 US dollars per week. Office space rental costs a minimum of 1,000 Kina per square meter plus GST per week. Land ownership is generally through a 99-year lease from the Lands Department. So in terms of KPMG in Papua New Guinea, KPMG is a professional services firm. We offer a broad set of services, including company statutory and secretarial services, a business address, taxation compliance services, accounting, visa and migration, payroll, taxation consulting, trust administration, audit, corporate finance, management consulting, secondments, risk governance and internal audit, fraud investigation, and information technology advisory. Please note that the information is provided as a general guide only and is not intended as specific advice. Information in this publication may have changed this publication date, and we recommend that you contact KPMG before commencing any operations in PNG. That is the close of the formal presentation, and if there are questions, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Please ask away. Thank you very much for your time.
네, 지금부터는 통역사님과 순차 통역을 통해 진행하겠습니다. 이제 실시간 Q&A를 시작하겠습니다.
Thank you, Director Osterberg, for your presentation. From now on, we will have a Q&A session, and we will have an interpretation in Korean and English.
네, 강연자님과 드디어 실시간으로 만나 뵙게 되어서 정말 반갑습니다.
We are grateful to meet you online, even though the circumstances. Thank you for coming online with us.
네, 질문이 있으신 분들은 손을 들고 말씀을 해주시기 바랍니다. 온라인으로 접속하신 분들께서는 자유롭게 채팅창을 통해서 질문을 남겨주시면 됩니다.
So any participants in the floor can raise their hands for their questions. Those who are online can use the chat room for their questions.
Thank you very much for inviting me to present at your conference, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
발표 기회를 주셔서 감사합니다. 질문이 있으시면은 해주시기 바랍니다.
네, 그러면 현장과 온라인을 통해 질문을 편하게 남겨주시기 바랍니다. 먼저 미리 들어온 질문을 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다.
We will go with the questions that we've received in advance and go through the questions.
첫 번째 질문입니다. 참치 가공 공장의 경우 가장 발생하기 쉬운 문제나 주의해야 할 점이 있다면 무엇일까요?
So we would like to ask about doing business with the tuna manufacturing, tuna processing factories. What are some of the possible problems that we can encounter, that companies could encounter, or anything that we need to be cautious about?
There's no specific issues that a potential investor would need to be cautious about in PNG that are not applicable in other countries or other jurisdictions. I think that the legislative framework is in place. It is slightly fluid sometimes, so it would be very important to get strong legal contracts for any undertaking that you're going to participate in. That would be the main advice. The other thing, the other aspect to doing business here is that foreign currency is relatively short, and there's a large pipeline of funds trying to purchase foreign currency. So certain companies have difficulty in remitting dividends, and for large foreign currency outflows, there is a queue. So there can be difficulties in remitting funds, certainly at the moment, and that is a situation that has persisted for some time.
구체적으로 문제가 되는 것은 이슈는 없고, 특히 투자자들에게 당면하는 문제는 없고, 현재 규정이 잘 갖춰져 있고 있습니다. 특히 법적 계약서 같은 것을 관리를 잘 해야 되고, 투명성의 문제에서는 조금 더 신경을 써야 될 것 같습니다.
네, 답변 감사드립니다. 다음으로 두 번째 질문이 있겠습니다. 냉동창고 설립을 할 경우에 파푸아 뉴기니 현지에서 투자적 측면에 주의해야 할 점은 무엇일까요?
So the second question is, when we establish a freezer storage, what is some of the things that we need to be cautious about in terms of investments?
Well, you need to firstly, whatever investment entity you establish in Papua New Guinea would need to be compliant with the local legislation, and you'd need to register that entity with the regulatory authority, the Companies Office here, the IPA, and that, as I say, you know, the legislative environment or the operating environment is no different really from anywhere else in terms of making sure that you've got the correct setup, the correct you know, structure, the correct ownership structure. I'm not specifically familiar with the freezer business, but there'd be no obstacles to establishing a foreign-owned company here in Papua New Guinea. In terms of technical things, there are a reasonable set of skills. There's for technical matters, companies here are fairly reliant on expatriate or technical skills, so you may require specialist technical skills, and those people would require, if you were bringing them in for a specific undertaking, then you require permitting for them, but those are readily available. I mean, there may be a slight delay in obtaining the permits, but you know, the permits are available. So there shouldn't be any problem getting specialist technical skills that you require. Other than that, I don't think that Papua New Guinea offers any specific difficulties in terms of doing business.
PNG 정부가 비즈니스를 하는데 특별한 어려움을 주는 것은 없고 등록 절차를 잘 따라서 일반적으로 규정된 기관과 계약을 해야 할 것입니다. 또 알맞는 설치 방법 관리 그리고 규칙을 가지고 설치를 하고 투자를 해야 할 것이고요. 기술적으로 전문가를 초빙하고 그 전문가를 훈련하는 데 허가 또한 가능하기 때문에 전문가를 활용하고 또 훈련을 시킬 수 있을 것 같습니다.
네, 현장과 온라인으로 질문이 있으시다면 자유롭게 말씀 부탁드립니다.
We will take further questions from online and in the event room.
네, 교수님, 굉장히 자세한 귀중한 정보 정말 감사합니다. 저는 세 가지 질문이 있습니다. MSC Certification 취득과 관련한 질문입니다. 첫 번째 질문은 그 MSC PNG 회사들이 MSC 서티피케이션 인정을 받는데 기간은 얼마나 걸렸는지요. 그 다음 두 번째 질문은 그 MSC 서티피케이션을 취득할 때 MSC 라벨링 제품들의 타겟 시장이 어디라고 목표를 잡고 MSC 인증 취득을 받았는지 두 번째. 그 다음에 세 번째 질문은 아까 발표에서 가다랑어와 황다랑어만 MSC 서티피케이션을 받으셨다고 하셨는데요. 그 트로피컬 투나 중에서 왜 눈다랑어는 제외되었는지요. 눈다랑어를 제외하고 MSC 라벨링을 받으신 이유가 있으신지요? 이상입니다.
Thank you, Director Osterberg, for your presentation. I have 3 questions regarding the MSC certificates. First one is the PNG has obtained MSC certification, and we would like to know how long it took to obtain the certificate. The second question is we are wondering what your target market was for the MSC certified products. And the third question is we are aware that you received MSC for the skipjack and yellowfin tuna. We are wondering why you've excluded the big eye tuna.
Thank you very much for the questions. I'm not able to answer those in any great detail from the point of view that we were not involved in the MSC certification, and we're not specialists in that specific MSC certification field. So I'm afraid I'm not able to answer that question.
MSC에 직접 참여를 하지 않았기 때문에 질문에 답변을 드리기 어려울 것 같습니다.
예, 감사합니다. 한국도 최근에 그 태평양 다랑어, 열대 다랑어 관련 MSC 서티피케이션을 서티피케이션 취득에 관심이 있는 회사들이 많이 늘어나고 있어서 여쭤봤습니다. 다음에 혹시 그 관련된 답변을 찾으실 수 있으면 답변해 주시면 이메일로라도 답변해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Currently, Korea has a great interest in obtaining the MSC for tropical tunas in the Pacific Ocean, and we are doing putting effort to obtaining it. So if you have any further information in the future about this, the PNG certification for MSC, we would like for you to share it with us anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly, yes. If you have specific question on that MSC, perhaps the organizers could provide my email address, and I think it was probably in my presentation, and you could email me directly, and we can attempt to find the answer for you, or alternatively put you into contact with an entity here in Papua New Guinea that would be able to give you the answer. My thought is the National Fisheries Authority would probably be the most appropriate body to provide that sort of information.
MSC에 관련해서 더 추가적인 질문이 있다면 이메일을 통해서 요청을 하시면 관련 기관을 연결을 하든지 추가적인 답변을 드릴 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
예, 감사합니다.
Thank you. So any further questions?
네, 마지막으로 청중에서 들어온 질문을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 빠른 시일 내에 PNG 진출을 희망하는 기업들을 위해서 PNG 현재의 코로나19 상황과 방역 지침에 대해 공유 부탁드립니다.
For the companies that are expecting to start business in PNG, we would like you to share us about the COVID-19 situation and what are some of the rules and regulations you have currently at this moment.
Thank you. I think that Papua New Guinea has been affected, as is every other country, by COVID. There are some difficulties on the ground here in terms of being able to collect accurate data on the spread of the virus, because the population is very, very widespread and very in some very remote and inaccessible places, and therefore testing rates have not been very high relative to other places, and as a result, the data is not very clear. What is clear is that when COVID struck initially, there was a lockdown here, as there were in very many countries, and that was for a period of probably a month. Subsequently, the government has adopted a strategy called Nupla Payson, which effectively means a new way of living, and essentially they've adopted the approach that Papua New Guinea needs to learn to live with COVID and try and combat it as best that it can without substantial lockdowns. There have been curbs on activities, and more recently there's currently, in fact, they've recently put in place a 30-day ban on gatherings of over 20 people in response to some new outbreaks of the coronavirus in the Delta variant, which is fairly common now globally. Essentially, it has impacted logistics and travel between the country, and the ability to come, for foreign people to come in and out of the country. But relative to other places, the movement of goods and people is fairly free. So it remains to be seen what the latest wave of COVID has. But for people operating on the ground, there are not a great deal of restrictions. There are obviously restrictions in terms of face masks in public places, and face masks and temperature checks in buildings, and as I say, restrictions on gatherings. But other than that, there are no real impediments. COVID is not causing any real impediments to doing business currently. Further to that, the vaccination rate here is very low, and which is a concern to the government and to many businesses. And businesses are looking at ways to improve that vaccination rate. Here at KPMG, we have a vaccination rate of around 77% of our staff, so we are quite encouraged by that. But that would be much higher than most businesses. As I say, I think that there's a degree of vaccine hesitancy here, and there are practical difficulties in delivering the vaccination to remote areas. And so it's likely that the impact of the current wave will have some effect, negative effect. But for someone coming in to do business, it's unlikely to make much impact currently on day-to-day operations.
코로나19로 다른 나라와 비슷하게 소모임 금지라든지 마스크 쓰기 같은 규제를 가지고 있고 코로나19와 상생을 할 수 있는 생활 방식을 정부가 지금 구축을 하려고 노력하고 있습니다. 사실 인구가 많이 흩어져 있기 때문에 데이터를 수집하는 데 어려움은 있지만 그래서 검사 수가 정확하지는 않지만 그래도 규제를 잘 따르고 있고 사업을 하는 데 있어서 큰 규제나 뭐 제한이 없습니다. 특히 국내에서는 이동이 자유롭기 때문에 크게 사업을 하는 데 어려움은 없습니다. 특히 백신율을 지속적으로 늘려가고 있기 때문에 긍정적인 모습입니다.
네, 혹시 추가 질문이 없다면 시간 관계상 이상으로 Q&A 세션을 종료하도록 하겠습니다.
If there's no further question, we will end our Q&A session here. Thank you again for coming with us today. We look forward to seeing you in person soon.
또한 컨퍼런스 이후에 진행되는 추가 질문은
Just one more.
협력센터 메일을 통해 전달되어 주시기 바랍니다.
Any further questions after the meeting, we will collect them through email, or you can email to our presenter by email too.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. And as I say, if you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. But thank you, and I wish you success for the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
네, 이상으로 세션을 마치도록 하겠습니다.